Hey everyone, welcome to the channel for another Escape from Tarkov video. I'm back after the holiday break, and today's video is aimed at all the new players who've been coming to Tarkov since the hype train hit full speed ahead and the game has taken over the top spot on Twitch. This game is especially unforgiving to new players, and I'm sure everyone who has ventured out into Tarkov for the first time has some pretty unfortunate stories of their first experiences with the game. While it's definitely tough starting out, once you get the hang of things, the thrill of fighting against all odds to escape alive is seriously addicting. So hopefully some of these tips will help you with the basics and get you off to a good start out there in Tarkov. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at some tips for all the new players who have joined us in our quest to take back Tarkov City from the scavs. Escape from Tarkov is a shooter at its core, but it's also a survival game, which means your gun and armor isn't the only equipment you need to keep yourself alive. While the survival mechanics are still pretty basic at the moment, it's still very important to make sure you have the basic supplies that will keep you from dying to dehydration, starvation, and blood loss, because few things in this game are more demoralizing than winning a big fight and then dying 3 minutes later because you can't stop your leg from bleeding. With that being said, at the bare minimum, I try and make sure I have bandages to stop bleeding, a splint to fix a broken leg, painkillers so I don't have to limp after being shot, and something to drink to prevent dehydration. It's very common to start bleeding after being hit, which slowly drains your health over time, so you always want to have some bandages or a medkit that heals bleeding. All medkits except the AI2 will heal bleeding, so make sure you have a nice medkit or some loose bandages in your pockets. Splints and painkillers are both life-saving items that don't cost much, but help you in a pretty big way. If your legs get shot and reduced to 0 HP, you need to use painkillers in order to walk properly, and you never want to be limping in a firefight. Splints will fix broken limbs, but not blacked limbs, so they're really useful since they can remove the penalties from a broken bone and get you back to full strength quickly, but you still need painkillers if your leg gets fully destroyed. Water or juice is also a very important item to have with you, since at low levels you will likely get dehydrated in most raids until your metabolism skill levels up a bit. Dehydration is a real killer, giving you blurry vision and quickly draining your health, so watching your water levels is really important. You might also consider bringing some food along to keep your energy up, but it usually takes longer to run out of energy than it does hydration, so it might not always be needed. Your hydration, energy, and HP all carry over after you extract as well, so it's very important to make sure you are fully healed, hydrated, and fed up before you go into your next raid. It's really easy to forget, and trust me, you don't want to be halfway through a raid when you realize you forgot to heal, and now you're stuck slowly dehydrating in the middle of an open field. The hideout is one of the newer features in Escape from Tarkov, and it's already changed the game in a big way, especially for low to mid-level players since you can craft a lot of useful items instead of always having to buy them. Before you can even start crafting items, you need to build a generator and get yourself a fuel tank, which can be found quite commonly on Interchange and Reserve, or purchased from Jaeger or the Flea Market. If you ask me, the two most useful modules for new players in the early game are the med station and the workbench, since meds and ammo are things you'll need in every single raid that you play. The med station increases your health regeneration out of the raid, but more importantly, it lets you craft a very useful item right after building it, the Saloa medkit, which has a lot of healing points and will fix your bleeding as well. You can craft a Saloa using 2 AI2 medkits, or 1 painkiller, a bandage, and a splint, both of which cost less than just buying one from Therapist. Considering your only other option at low levels is just to buy overpriced AI2s or car medkits from Therapist, I think this is a much more useful option. The Saloa medkit is also needed for one of the first quests in the game from Therapist, so instead of farming them for hours or buying them on the flea market, you can just craft 5 and get the quest over with, which is much easier. The workbench is another useful thing to build in the hideout, since it will help you craft items that you need to continue upgrading your hideout and finish quests. At higher levels, the workbench also lets you craft some of the best ammo in the game, which becomes extremely useful because this ammo is very expensive. While it's not immediately as useful as the med station at level 1, using the workbench to craft wires, power cords, circuit boards, motors, and other hideout items can definitely make it easier to upgrade other parts of your hideout in the early game. Once you hit level 5, you will be able to start using the Flea Market, which is basically Tarkov's in-game auction house where you can sell items to other players, and it's one of the best tools you have to make some money. You can sell a lot of items to players for more cash than the traders will give you by just selling to them, so it's always a good idea to compare the prices you'll get from selling it to a trader versus how much you can sell it to a player, and choose the higher option. This is especially effective with barter items, things like computer parts, industrial items, tools, hideout items, and rare things like statues, keys, and key cards, because you can often get a much higher price on the flea market than from the traders. This extra profit really adds up over time, so I recommend starting right at level 5 that you check new items to see if you can make more money by selling them on the flea market. For the most part, weapons and attachments are also only slightly more expensive on the flea market, so if you have a bit of spare money, the market can let you buy a lot of things that you don't have unlocked, like armor, ammo, and weapon attachments. Just make sure you check the durability of any armor that you buy off the market, because there are some cheeky players out there who will try and sell you broken armor at full price. Something that's easy to overlook for new players is the gold mine that can sometimes be found on dead scavs, since their pockets and backpacks can hold some extremely rare and valuable items if you get lucky. It's easy to look at a dead scav with a crappy pistol and tiny backpack and decide that it might not be worth the risk to loot him, since his gear is barely worth looking at, let alone picking up. But you'll be surprised at what you can find on dead scavs, specifically in their pockets and backpacks. You can find rare barter items, large amounts of money, key cards for the labs, hideout items, and tons of rare keys on dead scavs. So as long as it's safe to loot, I recommend searching every single pocket and backpack you can find. It won't pay off every single time, but when it does pay off, you can sometimes make hundreds of thousands of rubles off of a single scav, and you don't want to turn a blind eye to that kind of profit. On this same note, the loot tables for jackets were given a huge buff recently, and they are sometimes ridiculously profitable because of the rare keys that will spawn in them. You can either keep these keys and use them to unlock even more loot for yourself, or you can simply take them over to the flea market and sell them for a crazy amount of profit. It's not uncommon to find keys worth over 100,000 rubles in the jackets spread around the map, and you'll often find a bunch of jackets in the same area, so when you see them, be sure to loot them. The insurance system in Escape from Tarkov is one of the more unique and misunderstood systems in the game, and either can be a huge money save or a huge money waste, depending on how you use it. If you insure a piece of gear, it will be returned to you about a day later if you lose it and no other player picks it up and extracts with it. Only certain items can be insured, and anything consumable like ammo, meds, grenades, and food cannot be insured. It's kind of a gamble, but certain items have a really good chance to return through insurance, and it's much cheaper to insure something as opposed to buying another one. For example, basic gear like backpacks, tactical rigs, low-level armor, and helmets will almost always come back through insurance if you die. This is because these items take up a lot of space and don't sell for a lot of money, so most players will leave it behind and you'll get to use it again. If you insure these kinds of items consistently, it basically creates a repeating loop where you get these items back to use the next day, meaning you don't have to keep paying full price for items that you'll need to buy in every single game you play. Weapons and attachments like sights and suppressors are less likely to be returned, since players will more likely take your weapon and any nice attachments and leave your armor after killing you. But if you're using low-level unmodified weapons, there's still a pretty good chance that you'll get it back through insurance. In general, if you have enough money to insure things and not go broke because of it, I recommend insuring most items, because it's surprising sometimes how much of it you'll get back the next day. Sometimes you'll die to scavs in a weird place and players will never find your gear, and it's a nice surprise to get a full loadout returned through insurance. As a final tip regarding insurance, it's especially useful when playing in a squad, because if one person dies and one person survives, you can take your friend's gear and drop it somewhere hidden so they get it all back the next day. Well, that covers it for this video going over some tips for all the new players coming into the game over the holidays. I hope you can get some use out of them and roll through the early game a bit easier. There's just hundreds of little tips that veterans could give to new players, so I'll likely do a follow-up to this one in the future if I get good feedback on this one. Coming up next from me though is an update to my ammo guide and a look at the new items that dropped over the holidays. I'll be streaming more of my raids in the 0.12 patch on Twitch at twitch.tv/jdogthewise, and it'd be great to have you drop by, so I'll leave a link for that down in the description. Thanks for checking out the video. As always, feel free to leave any comments, corrections, or suggestions down below, and until next time, stay safe in Tarkov City.